Welcome to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
All right. Well, welcome back. I hope your year is just as good as you had planned for. And I think today is another contribution to a fabulous year. We have an amazing guest, just a bubbly personality. And before I even provide the reveal of who is with us this week, I got to remind you, sharing is caring. And your generosity of not only liking the podcast, but keeping in mind, like, who's someone else that would really enjoy hearing this story or might gain some personal insight into possibilities for their present or their future. That's what makes this so magical. I love all the feedback. I just saw Janine had reached out and says, like, wow, Michael, I never thought I would enjoy listening to a podcast with some professional valuers and appraisers talking to each other. And it was fascinating. I'm like, it wasn't me. It was our guest. And today our guest, AJ Hutson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
We're excited to have you. And we want to know, were you born this way, or how did you come into and be so a part of the valuation and appraisal profession?
Well, thank you for asking the question. I'll tell you, my journey, I think, is unique. I think I have a unique origin story. And I'll start out with the fact that I was not in any way, shape, or form born this way. I stumbled, honestly, I'll say, into the appraisal industry. I was a struggling college student in Roanoke, Virginia, working part-time jobs to help put myself through college, and found an opportunity that I could work in an MAI's office. And my professional expertise at that time was doing administrative work. And I had, even in high school, I started doing that because it was a way that I could, make money on the side while you can still attend whatever classes you wanted to, and, have some flexibility, and you're not flipping burgers or something of that nature, right? You're in a professional environment, and, it's a safe place and all that good stuff. So I was in Hollins College at the time, and I was studying to be potentially a law student was where I was thinking.
Right.
And so my degree basis is I have a double major in political science and philosophy. This is why I tend more on the art versus science side of appraisal, I would say.
Oh, I love that.
But, that's quite a course load when you're going through college. So it was important to find something to do that I could pick up when there was a need and put back down when, you have ancient philosophy exam or something of that nature. And I had the great fortune to work with an MAI in Roanoke, Virginia. And he was, I'll say, a bit more of the old school ilk. Yeah. And he still at that point was handwriting mostly his appraisal reports. And he would hire admin people to come in and help him essentially transcribe and convert those handwritten documents into appraisal reports. And that was my first step into the appraisal industry.
I love that. You were, what do they call? I just forgot the name of people that decipher handwriting. You're like one of those people that can read personality.
I have no idea. But it was fascinating. I think about it today when you're producing a report and you're copying and pasting. Yes. That's literally what we were doing at that moment. I would get these legal sheets with handwriting. And if there was a section of the report that was really similar to another property that had been done, he would have gone in and made a photocopy of that and cut out the section, pasted it down, and then added here and added there, different things that he'd like to change. And then I would take that and synthesize it into a Word doc and get it to where we could produce the appraisal report. But to me, the real exceptional thing about that journey, and what I think was the beginning of my love, not only for appraisal in the industry, but trying to support others and trying to continue to develop and learn new things was the approach that he took as I did that work, because appraisal's odd, especially if you're coming at it from a completely different perspective and you don't have this basis of understanding and you're just getting into that world.
Yes.
And there's, things like economic obsolescence, And so I would see that he's developed some section there, and I'd come and say, tell me a little bit about what you're doing so that I can correct what I'm missing here so I can get the job done and get it moving forward. And that was my goal there, was to give him the best service that I could. And instead of answering my question with, I said this reason for economic obsolescence, he would say, come here, sit down with me. And he'd go over to his bookshelf and he would get the latest copy of the Appraisal of Real Estate from the Institute. Okay. And he'd say, look, let me teach you about economic obsolescence. Wow. And let's just read through that and talk about what impacts it. Why is it there? Yeah. How does it work? Now let's go back to the report. Now, do you see how those things work together? Do you even have to ask the question now, what did I intend when I was writing that, so that you could reframe that paragraph or whatever that I happened to be technically working on? And it was amazing. And it just kind of went like wildfire through me to be in that environment where somebody was so dedicated to helping me grow and seeing potential in that. Yeah. So that's a little bit about that journey. But, again, I'm dating myself in to say that my foray into appraisal was handwritten notes and long sticky tape on the back of photos. And I really think it's rare within our industry that you have the opportunity to have your origin story start at that place. Yes. If you're not born into it, I think a lot of people who are born into it get to experience what that, smaller shop environment was like. And there was an incredible amount of high quality work and legacy work being done in that way. And being able to be a part of that when I wasn't born into it, I think is a great privilege. And I'm very appreciative for it.
That's amazing. I mean, to have that experience early on, not even in the profession, really it's just employment, but that the thoughtfulness of, at that time, your employer to not answer your question. I mean, I love that. It's so, I mean, you mentioned being a double major in poli-sci and philosophy. I mean, that's what philosophy is. It's about, hey, I don't want to give you the answer. I want to teach you to think.
It's a good point, Michael. And I'll tell you that I've now learned that that's what being a good leader really is. If I just answer your question and move on, what have I done? I've created an opportunity where I'm going to answer your question again tomorrow. Yes. Versus if I can give you some core understanding of what's happening and the logic and the reasoning, then I can support your growth, which makes your job easier and my job easier. It moves our quality needle forward. Like it's a lot more powerful to teach than it is just to answer. And, to me, it's been an interesting journey in terms of, I was still in the throes of let's go to law school and I'm going to continue doing this appraisal thing until all that works out.
You went to law school, right? Would you go to No, I was just saying you're on the East Coast. I mean, you could have just gone to Duke, or you could have gone to, I mean, a lot of great choices out there.
Vote of confidence. No, I didn't. I began trying to decide what I might want to do on the law side of things. And, I worked in as a volunteer in the local prosecutor's office in Virginia. Right. I worked in a real high profile, wonderful law firm in Charlotte. I worked in the Senate as an intern for a while. I did lots of things. What version of a lawyer would I want to be, and I couldn't find a fit. That was really right for me. And so I took an interesting diversion after college and before while I was continuing my education in real estate appraisal. And I went to work for an international seafood broker.
That sounds like a perfect fit, given everything you've shared.
Oh, it was fantastic. And I actually learned so much about being efficient in that space, about being a good leader in that space, about working in a team. The gentleman that ran that organization knew that the more quickly he could be connected to his team, the more he understood what was happening around him, the more we could serve our clients, the more we would have the ability to leverage opportunities, And so he had a bit of like I don't know if I'm going to use this analogy right, but like a bullpen type management structure. And so we had this huge office and his desk was in the middle. And everybody's desk
kind of thing. Got it. Yeah,
was right in between it. And he could hear everybody making deals and all the way around him. And I learned so much about how to respond to challenges and how to network and how to be efficient, leverage resources and things like that. It was a great environment, but it was fast paced and fun. And I think, that really resonated with me. That speaks to a part of me that I enjoy in the work that I'm doing right now, to do like portfolio management. I call it mayhem management.
Mayhem management. I love that.
It's always really busy and fast paced, and I draw energy from that. So I really enjoy that piece of it. How many balls can we really juggle? Watch, see what we can do. So and continued my appraisal education while I was there. And what I was finding was, man, I can't quite fit that part of me that both loves that energy and learning and need for that constant development, but also speaks to this entrepreneurial part of me that wants to kind of do it on my own. And, I think a lot of attorneys have that vein as well, build their own practice and do their own thing. And so I continued down the appraisal path because the gentleman that I worked for in Virginia had always encouraged me. He'd say, AJ, look, no matter what you do, if you go into into appraisal, it's going to give you flexibility. You may have 5 other jobs that gives you flexibility. You may decide you want to have a family, and this business will have a platform that you can do that. You can be whomever you choose to be at the end of the day. And this business will serve you well if you learn the foundation and you take good quality education and you always do the right thing. You're going to find a good income source. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate that he helped direct me to a business that has given me exactly that. It gave me a structure that I could develop myself in my own little formula of what worked for me, Mm-hmm. And he's very right. And I think it's an incredible business for, people that want to have families or people that want to work for, large corporations. There's, a million different avenues within real estate appraisal that can get you there,
That's amazing.
Which is cool. Yeah, absolutely. So when the fish company kind of ran its course, I was like, that's not a fit either, even though I loved it. I've just 2 feet deep and jumped right into real estate appraisal and was always commercial from day one. Really appreciated that. I think a lot of people kind of have a longer journey to commercial if they kind of start out residential. And I'll tell you, I was exceptionally fortunate to be in great learning environments. When I got back into appraisal, being in groups where I could get great training. I got plenty of one-on-one. Again, small shop MAI firms where people cared enough to tell me, hey, AJ, go read that again. Hey, AJ, take this homework and think about what you're doing and give me real feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's been the greatest opportunity of my journey is the people in the path that stopped long enough to give me feedback. Say, it's not always, this is sunshine and roses. It's, hey, let's do our best. How do we make this better? How do we improve? How can you grow? And not only showing me the way to do that, but supporting me through that journey.
I think that's fantastic. One interesting thing you touched on, Ajay, don't want to step past, and that is, you said even as you were having other learning experiences, other employment opportunities, you said you were still kind of advancing in appraisal. What did you mean by that?
Oh, I was taking all my core classes, and
Oh, you were?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't pick up on it. I kind of wondered if that's what you meant.
A lifetime student. I can't help myself. So yeah, I continued to take all my core real estate classes and start towards my commercial, path. And shortly in that journey, was able to affiliate myself with the Appraisal Institute. And it was extremely beneficial to me in that, I was a recipient of their diversity and minority scholarships. And so it let me continue down that path to build my education while I was really young in the industry and, really, really new and still trying to kind of make it work from a income perspective that I could keep going on with my classwork. And I try real hard never to stop learning. It's a bit of an obsession.
Yes. Thumbs up on that one. Congratulations. That is exactly the right way to go.
And it's a podcast right now. I can take classes by listening to people's actual experiences.
That is definitely the case. So here you're moving from being an international seafood broker team member to a commercial real estate appraiser. It's a logical fit. I
think so.
I can't imagine the pipeline that's going to open up from everybody coming out of seafood broker into commercial appraisal. You're like, the Pied Piper here. It's just going to.
I'm telling you. I was going to say that, I'm very grateful in that. I think if you look at anything as a learning opportunity, you can apply it to wherever your passion draws you at the end of the day for an expertise, right? And I think all those steps along the way were part of my journey. And those folks with the seafood brokerage, we also had the real estate component to that as well that I could learn from and continue my interest as we went through it. So you never know.
That is true. That is so true. How did the process come together for you to actually go work for a firm, having been in the seafood broker space? Did you go back with the gentleman who had first been your employer, or did he offer referrals, or did you go to what was used to be called a newspaper that had like print in the back and like there was a classified section? Dating ourselves here, of course, humorously. Yeah. How was it that this came together? You mentioned you were taking courses through the Institute. Like, what was it for you?
Yeah. For me, actually, I found an opportunity. I don't know, it was online somehow. I was quite impressed with myself that I was able to find it online at that point in the, I guess that would have been late 90s, early 2000, right? By the time I got to that point. And I was like, ooh, still a little hard to find those types of things, to find an opportunity and land with a really great firm and begin the real work of being an appraiser and producing reports and, beginning to gain specialty in certain areas. And, it was really fascinating to me that, I was with a small shop for a while, and we did a lot of multi and a lot of litigation and also healthcare. And then we were able to partner with a larger firm and do healthcare on a broader basis. And that allowed me to travel and get new experiences. And it was just quite a journey being able to kind of take that next phase. But to your question, the transition was more about, I kind of never stopped. Just had my toe in all kinds of waters at the same time. And that's been a routine personality trait, I think. But that's where I draw energy is having influences from different things all at the same time.
That is fantastic. And so how small was the firm that you first went to work with?
It was just a a couple, let's see, I'm trying to think. I don't know. There were maybe 5 or less of us at the time.
Yeah. And so it was all, you're sitting around kind of like a small bullpen as opposed to a larger the International Seafood Center, just with whatever else is doing, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hit the ground running and start producing reports, which I loved. I loved that environment. I loved being able to feed that entrepreneurial side of myself and to begin learning about business development and client development. And, I really did. I really enjoyed that and enjoyed the report writing process, enjoyed getting to inspect properties. And I love to see how things are made. I always loved inspecting industrial properties because I find that fascinating how things come together in the world. And so my husband and I had been married for some time, but didn't have kids for a long while. And so you had the freedom to really kind of take it out and let it run and get as much as you possibly could in that time frame, and continued my education and, trying to work towards the MAI and all that good stuff in the same timeline. And so, it was great for me, as I said, professional student to have the type of opportunity where you can, you could continue to learn, and it's a practical application of your learning. You're taking the classes and then you're doing that in your work at the same time. And that was great. I loved that. And it's like wildfire at that point. You just want to know more so that you can step up to the plate to do the next assignment and kind of spread your wings a bit.
Yeah, that is absolutely a wonderful description of some of the best parts of the industry. Like you said, for those that have an interest, personal interest in learning, they really consider that where I'm from in the South, it's say when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you're rot. I mean, it's that whole perspective of being a lifelong pursuit of taking a little more of what you don't know into a little more of knowing. And you're never going to know it all, but you can know a little more. And then more importantly, you can apply it. Yeah. You're not just going to have shelf knowledge.
That's right. That's right. And even today, and actually in every facet of my life in this professional journey, I'll say especially as a review appraiser, I have very much appreciated, not only did I understand that, origin story of the small appraisal shop and what it really took to get those reports out the door and to live that life. And you're picking up photos at 11 p.m. and, you're delivering hard copy reports and you're binding and you're, that real grind of what it was like to do that. But then also the experience of being in a firm where, you've got their mouths to feed and you got to bring the work in the door and understand your clients so you can develop that and being constantly trying to understand your market and make connections and, know what's happening in your market so that you can give a good quality product at the end of the day. Coming into the role of review, I always came at it from that perspective. Like that report that I have in hand that I'm touching, I know you as the appraiser have been touching that thing way longer than I have, and you have a very different perspective than I can just reading a report. And reports are great, and we can certainly do a great job to develop our results in those, but it's still not the same. And to always remember that perspective of the person who had boots on the ground and went through that process and is constantly in their market, and knowing what it takes to develop that expertise and then honoring that through the review process. I appreciated that perspective. I don't think I personally would have been as strong a reviewer had I not understood where it came from. And I always kind of, really, that's the appraiser I have in my mind when I'm reading if it's someone I don't know.
I love that. So how did it, given your energy and your thirst for learning, your natural curiosity and a sense of really controlling your own destiny, but still having some flexibility, how did that contribute to the different employment opportunities that you had early on in your career?
Yeah. Let's see if I can answer that one well for you, Michael. It's something where I found as I was working in the shops and then we began to associate with larger companies, I really liked that larger corporate structure. And
Yes.
I was interested by that. And I wanted to find a way that I could maybe move into an environment where I could explore that side of me in a different way.
Sure.
I've always enjoyed learning. I'm probably oversharing by saying this one, but my mom would get a kick out of it. When I was a kid,
Yes.
she bought me this huge like canvas painting, like 10
Okay.
feet long. And it was
Blank canvas?
no, it had school children printed on it, two rows of school children printed on it. And it was like just to be a decoration in
Sure.
the room. And she would let me take it down off the wall and I would carry it into the living room or carry it outside and teach to them all day long. That was my play. I would teach to my little children. And so like I always had that part of me that I wanted to help develop others and I wanted to, be engaged in my own development and learning. And I've been passionate about, finding ways to be a better leader, to build teams, to find synergies, and also just efficiency is fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
It really is fascinating to me how we can leverage those interpersonal dynamics to then have a great net result in our actual day-to-day business. And it's better for the people and for the business. That's, I think, a very unique space. And I liked it. And I found in those corporate environments, there was a space for that, right? There was room to kind of take it out to run and see what you could learn there. And part of that desire for the next chapter prompted my move into the financial industries.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep, it did. Absolutely. And started out with Wachovia Bank, talking about dating myself.
Yeah. Wachovia.
Absolutely fantastic organization. I enjoyed being there, and it was a great learning environment for me. Some of the things I draw on every day come from those first experiences of being able to get up from my desk and walk to the underwriting side of the room and say, tell me why you think this way. Because as an appraiser, I don't care about, this piece of it. I'm reflecting the market. That's all there is. And, tell me why this is important to you. Help me understand. And again, having people in your life that were willing to go, hey, sure, let me talk to you from my point of view and share, what we're doing long term and how we're going to service a loan and what inputs are considered and how we look at your income stream that you've estimated and considered that in our underwriting and, how we move through that reconciliation of where we place weight, where we don't. And and so from a learning perspective, it's all in that same appraisal bucket, which we said is very, very big, right? That you're able to come at real estate from so many different angles. And it's a tremendous opportunity to go into the financial institutions and kind of change the scope of what I understood about real estate and my client from that for that matter. And I do think it's very important to understand, your client. That's not the only one out there, certainly, but
that's a fascinating opportunity, like you said, to be able, and some people totally relate to what you're speaking to, that in-person experience of employment where you could go over and like, hey, do you have a minute? And they'll be like, most times they say yes, sometimes they say no, come back in an hour or whatever it might be, or come back tomorrow, and get a question answered and like just sit and converse and learn and discuss and share ideas and perspective. I think that's one of the lost things, sadly. And not that, I think remote brings a lot of benefit, but as you touched on, just to be able to go right after that and just broaden your perspective so significantly in such short order of time.
Yeah, it's true, Michael. I personally couldn't have replaced that impact on my own journey. I will say, as someone who I have always appreciated the ability to work primarily remotely, not always. But, I do think today, with the adoption of the Zooms and the teams and these types of programs, and especially with organizations like Hoyer's, there is a ton of connectivity with people I would have never been able to reach, even in the environment that I appreciated so much, right? I'll give you an example from yesterday. I was on a phone call with 3 of our teammates in Canada, and we were talking about, something about the retail portfolio that they were managing. And I began to broaden my knowledge base from their perspective. Someone I in my standing up and walking across from my cubicle perspective, I would have never known they were even there. And so when you can leverage with or you can work for an organization that not only has all these different service lines, but encourages connectivity between those and information sharing and employee groups and corporate programs that allow you to kind of be a part of more than just your singular focus. I think that's a really, really neat opportunity too. So different, absolutely different.
The market right now is tough for appraisal companies. Many companies are having a hard time getting enough work with the same marketing they used to. Is your company struggling, having a hard time getting new customers or getting additional work from existing customers? The answer to this problem is easier than you think. Do more business with the people you already know. Over 10 years, the average U.S. appraisal firm meets over 17,000 potential customers. That's a lot of people you could be doing business with right now. But it's a big problem if you don't have a proven process to communicate with them. StoryLux turns this problem into an opportunity to grow. Our advanced AI marketing tool can rebuild your contact lists and harvest long-forgotten communications. Imagine reaching out to everyone you've ever met with just one click. For the cost of 1 or 2 appraisals a month, StoryLux helps you reconnect and market to people who already know you, like you, trust you, and want to do business with you. Act now by contacting StoryLux today to turn your business growth dreams into reality. Email appraisal@storylux.com. That is appraisal@storylux.com. And now back to part 2 of the episode.
What was it like in the cultural difference between going from a smaller firm staffed with professionals to working in a financial institution in those earlier years for you?
Yeah. I found a great team within the financial institution where I started with. We were supporting small business section within the bank, and that really resonated with me. I feel like small business is the foundation of kind of the American dream. I mean, it's something I'm passionate about. And so I really enjoyed being in that group of professionals where, be it our reviewers or our internal evaluation team or, the underwriting team and the folks that are on the, that are in the trenches with these small businesses trying to help them find a way to make it work. That spoke to me. I grew up, my mother is a hairdresser, and she had her own business for the past, I guess, nearly 50 years. And I know what that's like. I know what that journey is to try to live in a small business. My husband is part of a family business, and a small family business. It's 40 something years, 48, I think, years in business. Yeah. And so that being in that type of financial institution environment first, that was a great segue for me personally, because I could really relate to what we were trying to accomplish. And I think everybody has to, they say these days, find your why. That was my why at that point, where I knew that what we're doing, it's very important that we do a good job, because we have, to ensure that results are of a certain quality in order to meet the functionality of our business and be accountable to our employer. But also, you're making people's dreams happen. You're really able to help them expand their businesses and hire new people and reinvest in their communities. It was a great transition for me. So it didn't feel like I went to some enormous institution. It felt very, very, very relatable and very focused, very, communal. That's a good word. it was very focused.
I love that. And then what was your role? Did you go in as a staff appraiser, or did you go in a review capacity, or did you go in, I take it you didn't go back, you weren't doing seafood brokering for him.
No, I mean, I offered, but no. Yeah. No, yeah, I went in as a staff appraiser and did that for a little while, and then that's kind of a appraiser and review at the same time.
Okay.
And then I'd been there a couple years when we had the merger with Wells Fargo, and then I transitioned primarily over to review at that point, and began working, with that broader review team, not just our kind of insulated small business team, and working in larger projects and throughout the Southeast, and some incredible professionals who, of course, as has been my journey within the appraisal industry, leaned in and never asked why, and did their best for me, and always answered my 9 million questions. Yeah. So it was great. It was great. And it was a point of transition. We were in the, let's see, 08 to 2010 kind of era then. Yeah. And the market was crazy, and we were seeing things that I had never seen. I think appraisers really, and this is something that I encourage with our teams now, now's the time to lean in when you see anomalies in data, and when you see things popping up with the appraisal reports, because a well-placed phone call to the buyer, seller, broker, investor, whomever it is right now is going to teach you something about how real estate markets work that is really hard to learn. When the market is stable or growing, you really have a tremendous opportunity to not only build a solid foundation, but a reputation within your industry as you're someone who cares about understanding the why and getting it right. And so, I was very fortunate in that time period to be in an environment where we had senior folks who said, no, here's why we're doing it. And let's talk to our local appraisers. Let's understand what they're seeing. Let's go beyond dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and try to make sense of this thing. Try to manage risk, certainly, but to understand, what tools do we use when there's no data? Literally, no data.
Literally,
we still have an appraisal. I'm still have an appraisal to produce. Oh, what do we do? And so, it was a really good time. I think for me, I'm very appreciative that I was in that structure then, because as today, it hits every property type differently. It hits every market differently. And, you really have to be sure that you're leaning in with experts in those moments.
That is. What was the environment like? You mentioned a bit of that connected community experience in the early days of the first steps in your financial institution employment. What did you find? Because obviously being a curious learner and a professional student, how much of that was driven by you, and how much of that was, it's a different time, of course, but how much of that was the employer providing internal or external education and learning opportunities for you?
That's a good question. I'll say in that environment, this was more organic learning. This was, we have a business need to understand what's happening here and to do it the right way. And I talk about when I'm reviewing, I'm thinking of the appraiser, right? But when I'm in a situation where I'm thinking back to those days when there was a ton of risk, and we're trying to determine how these things are going to work out, and that we know if we approve this appraisal report, that thing's going into foreclosure or what have you. You want to be sure that you're sure. And did we support our conclusions? Is it market based? Do we have evidence for what we're doing? What's the downstream? And so I think that one was really more of a training born of necessity.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll tell you that the learning opportunities and things like that continued to be something I really wanted to find. And as I transitioned from Wells over to BB&T, and that I had an opportunity with BB&T that was back in that small business space, which I smile every time I talk about it. I've always been very passionate about small businesses, and when I made that transition and got deeply involved with the BB&T organization, the training opportunities just went out the roof. The leadership and development training that was in place for that organization was incredible, and they welcomed me into it, and had some folks within my journey who have always supported me and still do today, to be sure that they understood that part of me that was hungry to learn, and were very invested in trying to help me learn and grow and be fulfilled in my work, and knew, that if you have someone who's a constant learner, that if you don't find a way to feed that, they leave you for another learning opportunity. And so helped me get involved in some of that leadership development training, and that began my journey of managing people and process and these types of things, and had the opportunity within BB&T to do something really unique in that they had, I don't exactly know what form it's in now. I do think it still exists, but in a bit of a different form. But at the time it was called the banking school. And so they would take I think it was a class of 80 or so across the organization every year. And it was a 2-year program where we would go take master's level courses at Wake Forest University on economics and, these types of things that would dovetail into the banking industry. And we would also do leadership and development training in this core group over that 2-year journey. And it was both in-person learning at Wake and distance learning through modules. But talk about fantastic to feed that, forever student. You're able to sit with a cross section of people in the financial industry. You're able to sit down with the leaders within the organization, hear what they're solving for, how they're solving for it, what does the future look like, and not only your little piece of the pie, but how we all work together and how we can better serve each other, and how are we going to begin to not really be as focused on. For me, it was, yes, we have this core component of appraisal, but as also a people leader and a business leader, the scope now changes. And I really loved that environment and that process of learning and development.
That's amazing. I'm just curious, especially for those that are not familiar with this. I too had an opportunity to participate in something like that, and it was transformative. And it highly influences what I encourage, especially college students, to consider, and recent grads. Oh, were you still required to actually maintain a day job and do the banking school, or did you? Okay. I was just making sure that I didn't know if it was like something like they extract 80 people out of the bank, and you all really learned it.
I don't think they would have ever found the budget for that. But so I finished up my MAI not too long before I started the banking school journey, and so I just went from one learning opportunity to the next, and it was great. And we would spend a couple weeks in the summer on campus and do these focused activities, and it was really neat. We do things like, I don't know what program you went through, but where we would run a simulated bank where we would, it was like a computer module where you would, decide when you're going to offer shares and what you're going to sell them for and when you're going to pull them back. And, the more of the business mechanics of bank operations. And we also had, which I thought was really a unique setup. They had all of the executive leaders within the organization come and do focus group sessions with our group. And they would sit down in a room with us and just talk. And, it was open access, ask any questions you want, extremely transparent. Yeah, it was really, really neat development opportunity.
That was fantastic. I highly encourage those people that are so inclined find employers that are willing to make this kind of investment in people.
Yep.
And there's a lot less of them today than there used to be, but
Yeah.
there's still a lot of them out there because as you experienced with the banking school program, and I'm aware of personally as well as through peers, a number of these programs know that in order to cultivate their future leadership, they need to invest, they need to make the commitment and make the investment in a small group of individuals that they see opportunity in, they see value in, they see impact from or for, and they know that those people are going to be the ones leading those business units and leading the company at some point in the future. Congratulations for being part of that.
As well. And Michael, what it instilled in me as someone who has always had that journey to improve is not only my appreciation for those opportunities, but my responsibility to provide that for others, right?
Yes.
To provide pathways for others, just as you did, not only by encouraging them, but by, component of my role today is how do we have internal training that drives us forward, that gives support to training appraisers, that helps match people with their development opportunities and continues to focus those expertise on how we all grow together. And, I think it is rare that you find organizations that have these substantial programs, but it is something we need to incorporate in our day-to-day as well.
I think that is absolutely wonderful. And what a difference it makes. You receive that and your ability to pay that forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and I'm very appreciative of the environment that I'm in here at Colliers, and that, in any role, I think, you have your day job, so to speak, to your question of did they pluck 80 people out? Yeah. But you have your day job, but I've been given, the ability to say, hey, how can we grow? How can we learn? How can we improve? What do we do? How do we stand behind our professionals? How do we continue to move the quality needle? What do we do to be better? Always being reflective and trying to develop is incredible. And so I've very much appreciated having a bit of an open forum on that, where we can keep driving that future growth.
No, I definitely appreciate that. And, you're one of the, as you said, you have a unique perspective in your own origin story for the industry and through the industry. So here you went from the private sector, you went to financial institutions, and now you're working at one of the large named commercial firms that has a number of disciplines. What was that experience like, going from the financial institution world to Colliers?
Well, you get a kick out of this one. When I left the private fee business and went to financial institutions, all of my appraiser friends said, AJ, you've gone to the dark side.
They still say that. It hasn't changed.
And so then when I left the financial institutions and went back into the fee side of things, all my financial institution appraisal world said, AJ, you've gone to the dark side. I'm like, wait a minute. Which two dark sides? I don't get that. No, I think it's been such an exciting journey. It really has. I loved my journey through the financial institutions. Wouldn't trade the experience for anything, but it has been great. The environment that I'm in, being able to be back in the day-to-day of working in appraisals and working through compliance matters and talking about how we better serve our clients and what we're, like I said before, doing to drive quality forward. And the portfolio management space for me is absolutely fascinating, that we're able to kind of leverage the opportunity to have all that financial institution knowledge and to help bring that perspective as we manage across, large projects. It really is unique, and I think offers a service to our clients that it is a differentiator for us. But I've found it to be an incredibly welcoming environment, very collaborative environment. Yes. I'm on the phone 1 minute with Washington and the next with Florida and the next with, and everybody is open and ready to grow and always talking about, what are we doing to make ourselves better? And then that, as I'm sure you know, by this point resonates with me. What are we doing to make ourselves better? Yes, I'm very committed to that mission statement. And so I've found a home in that regard, and I'm very grateful for that.
How did the opportunity for you come about to leave one dark side for another dark side?
I know. How about that? Yeah. As that constant student, Michael, and I can't help myself. I was quite happy in my role, but ready to kind of, hey, I think I can learn something different. I can use this in another way. I can challenge myself further, right? And then so that's what I went looking for was a challenge, something that would be, a real opportunity to throw myself in the deep end.
Yes.
And was able to align with the exceptional team at Colliers, and I've really, like I said, really appreciated that. Portfolio management, much like small business, I'm very passionate about that, in that I love the moving pieces and the fact that there's always something going on, always a problem to solve. That part was really, really attractive to me, that we could lead a team that focused on efficiency and focused on quality and bringing all those things together in a way that delivered great results. So that was an easy alignment for me. And then the quality component of my role, we talked about, enjoying the structure and certain things of that finance environment. And I feel like I kind of have the best of both worlds a bit now, and that I still have my lens of compliance and risk and quality and all those things that I spent a long time developing within the financial institution, but I get to kind of let the entrepreneurial and the business side of me run in other ways too. So yeah, I like that a lot. I like being a part of that vision and doing my best to add to it.
That completely makes sense. And would you say, as you reflect back on that opportunity to go from one dark side to another, was that because of, once again, found a little posting on the internet, or was it more one that it was, as happens, sometimes a client opens up an opportunity, or was it just, somebody came out of the blue and swooped you up?
Yeah, I think it's more of the stars aligned, right? But it's one of those things where, it's tough to make a change when you have such a wonderful institution and a rewarding role and fantastic professionals that you work with every day, and still many times talk to every day now.
Yeah.
That's an environment that's always tough to leave. But sometimes when the stars align and you're ready to grow again, the right opportunity opens up. So
no, I appreciate that.
And it was meant to be.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that question is because for a lot of people, I've heard the feedback that, like, the doors are not open for me. And I'm like, I don't know that that's true. And it is true. And so for someone like yourself to be able to share just some of the perspective of how do stars align, like how do people actually create their own magic, gives people hope and inspiration. And that's why I take the time to ask the question, because you are one of those people that does provide some of that hope and inspiration for a lot of people. And that opportunity to share it on a much broader scale is much appreciated.
Well, thank you for asking it in that way, Michael, because I wasn't really thinking of it from that perspective. Something that I've always tried to do is, I try to always come into an organization and do my best to leave it better than I found it. And what I mean by that is, growing relationships, giving my best, trying to give great service to the people that are around me. And I think those types of things create connections, whether it's with your clients or your vendors or have you. And so, I'm always going to think that sometimes you have to really work to open your own path. And I think this is, in my experience, there are a lot of people in this industry that would go to the ends of the earth to help someone who's even perhaps their competitor.
Yeah.
We're very invested in the things that bring us together. And, I would always encourage to folks, get involved in your local appraiser communities, get involved in professional organizations, get involved in, groups that are around commercial real estate, like the crew organizations and things like this, where you have connections that are across different kind of disciplines within the industry.
Yes.
And it helps you build that network. And then, for me, always ask. There's always an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to put myself out there and be willing to be shot down, be willing to be transparent about, anything that you think may be an opportunity for growth in your area, be willing to say, here's what I am and what I bring. And I think we could do well together, but sometimes that creates your opportunity forward, right? Yeah. I think a lot of businesses today, are looking for partners, and whether it be an administrative professional or a compliance professional, they're looking for someone who wants to share their vision of let's take client service forward and use that as what draws us together, build a great culture and do great things, Yeah. And in that way, you can resonate and align with people on something other than just your appraisal network, right? You guys have a shared vision of how you make this little world we've created a bit of a better place.
I think that's fascinating because it highlights something that some people clearly know and many people don't. And you mentioned an organization that's not appraisal related. You mentioned Crew, wonderful organization, commercial real estate women. And by being a part of that, you get exposed on such a broader level than just the narrow focus evaluation. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
Talented professionals across the whole spectrum of commercial real estate. Would you say, that's a question that only you can answer, how much would you say your connection with fellow commercial real estate women has really propelled you and informed you?
It's a great question. And I myself am actually not a member of Crew. I've always wanted to be. I think very highly of the organization, but I've chosen to put my time in other networking areas. I will tell you that I am part of many different women's oriented organizations. So right now I'm active in the Chief organization, which is organization.
Yeah, how long have you been in Chief?
About a year or so now.
Okay.
And
it's a wonderful organization, especially for people in your role and responsibility.
It really is. And what my involvement there, I went to women's college, so I understand the uniqueness of that type of collaboration and growth environment. I was looking for that, and Chief was a great alignment for me. And I will tell you that for me, as we think about women leaders in particular, it's not only about the women leaders that have driven the journey, because while I try very hard to be that for the future, there haven't been a ton in my era of, coming into the business in the 90s. I was the only woman in the room a lot of times. I still am sometimes, right? And I have to think about, back to, we're bringing it full circle here, but the gentleman that I worked for Virginia saying, hey, this is a great job for women, because if you want to have a family, there's always something you could do. You can do residential appraisal, you can do commercial appraisal, you can work part-time, you work full-time, right? Or I think back to, folks within some of these corporate organizations who said, hey, you're qualified for this job and I think you have great potential, and I'm going to support you in that transition. I'm going to be your ally, as we like to say, and that type of, conversations around how we build diversity in the environment, and say, hey, if it had not been for strong male leaders through my journey, I would never be the place that I am today. So, I am trying to understand and appreciate the pathway and do my best to pay it forward. I have 2 daughters myself, and so I always think it's important to change the conversation in somebody else's journey for the future. I hope that there will be both strong women leaders to support them and strong allies other ways that drive them forward. And I certainly see that every day in my business.
That is wonderful. I mean, AJ, given everything you've seen, everything you've experienced, everything you've learned, when you look out over the next 3 to 5 years in the valuation and appraisal industry in the larger spectrum, what are you hopeful for or excited about?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. What a great question. I personally think in the next 3 to 5 years, not saying it doesn't today, but quality is going to matter. It's going to matter a lot. It's going to matter that you did good research on your comparables. It's going to matter that you know your market. It's going to matter that you could differentiate your property type, your location, the driving forces. I think AI is certainly going to impact our industry. I think that may begin to further leverage some of the tasks that are a bit more data oriented, and our focus will naturally have to shift to judgment and the quality of that judgment, and being able to harness the experience of professionals to tell that story. So that's super exciting for me, because I think we're getting kind of down to the meat and potatoes of what we do. Data is always going to matter. There'll be automation in that impacts us, absolutely. But that professional expertise where we interpret the data and do a great job of servicing our client, those two things are going to drive us forward in the future, and allow the professionals that are focused on that to really set themselves apart.
Oh, fantastic. Well, AJ, this has been just a fast-paced, high-energy, upbeat hour. I can't even believe we're already at that time. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing so richly and reflectively on your journey in and through this industry.
Well, Michael, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share my journey, and thank you for asking these questions. Anything that we can do to drive this industry forward, make it more accessible to people, make them understand that it's a great opportunity, great business to be in, and that we are charting an exciting path forward is a really good thing. So I appreciate the conversation.
No, you're welcome. And I couldn't agree with you more. I personally do believe that there are so many more roles and responsibilities that are going to come into existence in the near future because of the advancement in technology and large data sets and large language models that have never existed before. And we don't even know what those positions are yet.
That's right. That's right. And what an exciting time to be an appraiser, right?
Yeah. I mean, what do you want to call yourself, an appraiser or a data analyst or a data scientist? It's always been about data. It's going to always be about data. And those that are in the valuation profession have the opportunity to really guide and drive what's going to be on the, as they say, the docket for coming at us, and for informing and educating, users and clients, because they don't know and they have an idea of what's needed. And, through the conversations you've shared and that natural curiosity, that professional learner just opens up so many more ways, as you touched on, serving clients and fulfilling their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the time, Michael.
Well, you are very welcome. And as I mentioned, this was going to be a fantastic, fascinating, and fun episode, and it surely has been. So go ahead and double like this one, and think of an additional 2 people to share this with. And as well, a couple takeaway actions for you. What might be an organization beyond this industry that you could get involved in to broaden your perspective? And more importantly, who are you making a difference for? Because none of us got here on our own. So with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. And again, AJ, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Paru Zing's Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Paru Zing's Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.